Hello, I'm Zelmer again. Cover up my bad hair. And last time I talked to you about my novels, and tonight I want to talk to you about what's the difference between all these novels, even though it said in the last video that Bob Lamont is a recurring character. Let's talk about and I talked about how each time I write a little bit differently. I'll explain what I mean in this video. In the middle of my first novel, my debut novel, I wrote it first person, past tense. In other words, Miller Harris, the main character, that used to be his name. Miller Hoffman, the main character, is telling the story. In the second novel, I make it third person, where the story is about Bobby Lamont, but it's been told by another person. I just want to talk about what's the difference between all these different ways to tell a story. There's many different ways to tell a story. One is first person. It's all about who's telling the story. First person narrative is usually the main character telling his story or her story. There's another form called second person. That's very rarely used because it calls attention to itself. Second person is you. You are sitting in this room, your bedroom, and you're drinking scotch, and you're on Facebook. That's what second person is. Third person is he or she. Like if someone was telling what I'm doing right now, it'd be Zelmer was sitting in his room recording another video while drinking scotch and smoking a cigarette. That's the third person. Now, third person has a couple of variations. One is called omniscient, which is kind of like someone looking from a great distance, where all the characters, there's not like one main character, there's a group of characters, and all the thoughts of those characters are revealed. That kind of story is good for if you're telling something very epic, like a war. I think it's because you want to get all viewpoints. So I think that's a good way to tell that kind of story. And that's the main. And another differentiation is that either present tense or past tense. Present tense is stories unfolding as the book progresses. It's not being told as being emotional as much as it's being experienced by the reader. Present tense is not often used. There's a couple examples. Lesson 0 uses present tense. Is Bret Easton Ellis's sequel to that, his first novel, Lesson 0, called Imperial Bedrooms, also uses present tense. The present tense, I think, is not used as much as past tense, which is, the story has happened, and whoever's telling the story is happening sometime later in the past, and he's telling the story, or she's telling the story. It's not used very much because it kind of calls attention to itself. Whereas past tense is kind of accepted. So there's not many books that are written in present tense. Hardly enough. There are even a few memoirs. Most memoirs are, of course, written in past tense because the person is telling their story. There are a few memoirs that are written in present tense. The ones I can go off the top of my head. One's called, I think it's called Blackbird Childhood Lost. I don't remember who wrote this. I read it. It was a very good memoir. Another one is by one of my favorite writers, Elizabeth Horsell, who wrote Prose in Action. She wrote another memoir called More Now Again. It was about her drug addiction, and I noticed reading it the second time, because I read it a couple times, that all of it's in present tense. And I wonder if that was a conscious decision on our part, so that the reader never um, gets the idea that this person survived their drug addiction. That they kind of get hooked in the story and they don't know how it's going to end. So that's the different ways, and that's just some of the different ways. I think that a writer, when he's writing fiction, should not limit himself to this, to the just those forms. What I mean is, I think a writer who writes a novel should explore, and I think that's what I'm gonna try to do, explore other formats like of nonfiction. And I don't know how that would work. I'm still kind of thinking about it. And another thing I do want to talk about is the traditional crime novel, which I am thinking about writing a crime novel, but I don't want to write a traditional mystery, crime novel, in the sense that the focus is always on the investigator of the crime, whether it's a cop, private investigator, or even a medical examiner, or a lawyer. That's another frequent hero of the modern crime novel. Because I think, or sometimes it's told by the killers or the criminals' point of view. I think one person that is notoriously neglected from crime novels is the victim. We don't really. It's like they're the whole reason why the whole story is taking place. And I think that should be. I would like to think that their story, should be told too. I know the focus is it's supposed to be suspense, and you're trying to. Hold on just a second. I'm checking something. Okay. Anyway, I think that the victim's story should be an integral part instead of just the criminals, perpetrators, and the investigators. That they're a neglected part of modern crime novels, and that's what I think about it. Yeah, that's about what. Okay, that's what I think about it. And that's really all. I don't want to make a long video unless I'm in a very, very long video. So I'm trying to make this a very short video. And that's my thoughts about fiction writing. And I also want to add that the ebook, I don't think, is going to be the death of paperbacks. Though it might have to do reading detriment. What I mean is, I think sometimes when a competitive new technology comes out, it can force a change, and sometimes most of the time that change is for good. What I mean is, if you think about it, all the surrealist painting, impressionist painting, I don't know if this is my own theories, I don't know if anybody's ever noticed this, but I've noticed this. I think art got more expressive painting when photography came out, because no longer had to capture reality as it is. It could artists, painters could take reality as they see it, or the inner reality, surrealist painting. And I think very much, I don't think it's a coincidence that some of the most radical novels of the 20th century happened around the same time that movies came out, the cinemas started coming out. Because I think for the first time, writing had to take a new direction and show what movies couldn't show, because movies are all about the exterior. They're very visual. You can see and hear, but you can't really get into the main character's head, and that's where I think that the writers like James Joyce, Virginia Woolf, and most famous French writer Marcel Proust could delve into something that movies couldn't provide. And I think it's the same thing about modern fiction, that we should, as writers, what take advantage of the fact that even though technology has advanced, technology can't cover everything. Can't tell every aspect of the human story. And I guess that's all for right now. I'm just going to end it on that note. Talk to you later.